a shocking verdict for Amanda Knox.
Amanda is very upset. We're very surprised of the outcome of the decision.
Now reconvicted of slander for accusing an innocent man in her roommate's murder in Italy in 2007. Knox, who was 20 years old at the time, was arrested along with her then boyfriend for the death of Meredith Kircher.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay, welcome. I'm so excited to have William Ramsey from William Ramsey Investigates back on the show. We've done probably more shows together than at least any other guest on my channel. And certainly last time we've talked about Amanda Knox and Joe Rogan. Oh, I think once or twice at least before. Am I wrong?
Yeah,
is it once or twice? At least once, right? Yeah, and
back in 2020, her last appearance. Yeah,
and she's back again on the Joe Rogan show to promote her book, Free: My Search for Meaning. No, that's not a joke. That's really called Free: My Search for Meaning. Welcome, William Ramsey.
Roberta, great to be with you again. It's been too long, and congrats on your step up in the rankings. The top 1% in the world is a great accomplishment. So kudos to you.
Thank you very much. So what did you think of this interview? What were your thoughts, initial thoughts?
Well, I was actually shocked to see her back on a show, believe it or not. Like, I didn't think that, like, after you and I kind of looked at it, I thought maybe somebody would get a clue and, say there's a lot more to the story than he seems to think. So I was surprised to see her. And then I just saw it was like a redux of our last show, like watching her again. She starts off with this whole sob story, this whole thing that he was raped and Meredith Kircher was raped and murdered. This was back in 2007. And I mean, it just started from there. And also Joe Rogan they come out the gate almost like the West Memphis 3. You were connected to something you didn't do. So that first statement of Rogan is just right there. And people who know this case know that she was convicted at least twice. I mean, those convictions were overturned, but at one point she was literally convicted, and she still is in litigation. She's still undergoing a appeal for her calumnia conviction. So she's on this show, and she's still in the court system in Italy. So,
right. So that was the Supreme Court. She doesn't really have much of a chance of, my understanding, of overturning her conviction for slander, which means she's a convicted liar. And there is Joe Rogan. And he's not just the first interview, he was a much more of a kind of receptive listener, although he did, chime in and push her story. This time he is a full-on propagandist. And at one point he says, who are these people that think you're guilty? Are they even people? Do they even exist? Do they even mean anything? Everyone knows, he says at one point, everyone knows you're innocent. And I felt if it had been a classroom, I would have stood up and said, excuse me, I think she's guilty. I don't think, and I think it goes further than that. It's not that I just believe that she's guilty. I feel that we can know she's guilty by the amount of evidence against her, which is large, not small. And he goes, well, the other guy, and Rudy Gude, who I believe was involved in the crime. I believe, like the Supreme Court that let her go, that this was a crime of multiple attackers, which is hard to imagine. I get that it's hard for people to imagine these kinds of crimes. And of course, Amanda Knox capitalizes on that, calling it a murder orgy. That she was there at the scene of the crime. She washed Meredith Kircher's blood off her hands and feet. And that the break-in was staged. All those things were established by the, Supreme Court that let her go. That's her exonerating decision. And we're supposed to believe that, like, well, she's a known liar, like convicted liar, and we're supposed to, how dare us not believe her?
Right. I mean, it's incredible. And the overlooked, these are easily, you can find this out on a simple Google search too. Like a lot of the stuff, these findings and the things that were problems with the crime scene the police found it so fast. And they were like, even their alibis were sketchy, phone calls were sketchy, just everything, like the finding of the body in the locked door. She was avoiding people. I mean, these are known facts, like trying to have people avoid finding the body. Rudy Gaudet has also been on record, like telling his side of the story that, she was there. He has not changed his opinion. She should sue him basically for slander, right? He should be in court with her because he's placing somebody he thought was there and her on the scene of Meredith's on the night of the death.
And Joe Rogan brings up this DNA. He goes, well, how dare this prosecutor and her new relationship with the prosecutor take center stage we might have to do a part 2 because of this, but in a good part of this interview, her newfound relationship with Manini, who prosecuted her newfound, it's not quite a friendship, it's a relationship.
Right.
And what a saint she is to forgive him for doing this horrible thing to her when she did nothing. And then Joe Rogan steps in and says, well, yeah, I think he was a horrible guy. I'm not as nice as you are. I mean, there was DNA evidence that implicated Rudy Gaudet. But what they're leaving out is that there was a ton of DNA evidence that implicated Amanda Knox, namely, and this is really important, the DNA that lit up under luminol in multiple places of the house, which means that it's mixed blood of Amanda and Meredith Kircher in the bathroom, the hallway, and the room of the staged break-in. And we also know that Amanda Knox had staged a break-in as a prank, as a sorority prank. So, this was not uncommon for her to stage break-ins. And she was like, how dare they think this break-in was staged? And there's no, for those who say, well, it's just luminol, other things light up luminol, like, well, first of all, they'll say bleach. And if that were the case, there would be no DNA found. That would destroy DNA. And second of all, then they go root vegetables, that Amanda Knox somehow, rubbed root vegetables on her feet and it lingered with the Meredith Kircher's blood somehow. But no other DNA that lit up under luminol was found of the other 2 roommates, Philomena and Laura. And no one else falsely implicated themselves. I'm going to say falsely with sort of a wink and a nod, implicated themselves under questioning. It was only Amanda who was constantly changing her story. Once Raph pulled, meaning her boyfriend, Raffaele Solecito, pulled her alibi, then her story changed and she started to falsely implicate her boss, Patrick Lumumba, who was nothing but nice to her. So, and who she still owes a ton of money to, no matter how much money she makes from her books. I think she made $2 or $3 million from her first book. She's never paid him back.
He went to jail. She literally blamed the black guy, like the classic trope, like put it on the black guy. He went to jail for that. And he also, underwent reputational costs. So,
right.
She never said sorry. She never mentions it or says sorry, which
No, no need to say sorry, nothing. And he got himself out with his own ironclad alibi. But here is Joe Rogan. The interview starts off with, you're connected to something you didn't do forever.
Right. Incredible. He should know better. It's interesting because in the ads, there's like an ad that says, I want to know knowledge about everything on any subject. And then he has Amanda Knox on his show. It's like such a joke. And she also engaged in the weird laughing that she did in the last one we analyzed 4 years ago. Is like her laughs really are, to me, are very off-putting.
Yeah, she's got that very off tone. I think she's very much a psychopath. And her main interest, and there's at one point where she says, do I now that I've exonerated myself, and of course she's now part of the I thought this was interesting. The California Innocence Project has now changed its name to the Innocence Network. And this is right after they got a lot of bad press because they are trying to free Scott Peterson. So now she's sitting on the board of that same organization. Correct me if I'm wrong, if I got that confused. If it's another California Innocence Project. Oh, maybe it's the Los Angeles Innocence Project. Maybe I'm wrong.
I looked up the one she's associated with, and I think it's in San Diego. So it would make sense.
Is that the South Carolina? That's not the South. Southern California. Was the one that's another one that's had a scandal too.
Yeah, it's a different one. It's not the one.
Okay. Why are they renaming themselves like a cult? Is what I want to know. Good question. Correction. That's not. That's right. That's the Los Angeles Innocence. There's so many Innocence Projects. You're right. It is that. So I was like, why are they renaming themselves? And why is Amanda Knox sitting on the board? What reputable organization would have a convicted slanderer, liar sit on their board? But never mind. But I thought everything would change with Joe Rogan after they had Sheldon Johnson on. So if you don't know this story.
I do. I know Sheldon Johnson very well. He was on there with the guy from the Innocence Project. Wasn't it Dubin?
Josh Dubin. Yeah. He was also, strangely, he was the juror consultant, right? For Charlie Adelson. For Charlie Adelson. Right. Yeah. So he's trying to bamboozle the jury with all this stuff. And he basically sells Charlie Adelson his services, and Charlie Adelson gets convicted in record time. I think it's like a 2.5 hour time. He's out of there before he's ever convicted, but he's left the scene. Anyway, Josh Dubin comes in with Sheldon Johnson, this man who he said was not innocent. So it's something different. So forget if you've ever thought that any of these exonerated quote unquote people are guilty. Like I happen to think that come on the Joe Rogan show, this is different. This is different than all the innocent people. This guy is guilty, except he was given an exceedingly long sentence. And the reason he was given a sentence is he was a gang member. He was particularly violent, and the judge gave him a break 2 times because his father, who was, I believe, a deaf mute, was involved in the, had been in prison too. And they say, look, it's this generation of prisons, being in prison and violence handed down generation, give him a break. And he said, but next time you come in front of my court, I'm going to, throw the book at you. And they said, well, and so he did, and he gave him 50 years. He shot a guy,
Right.
And they said, well, they just injured him enough. All he had was a Band-Aid, a cut. But I mean, he did try to kill a guy. It was attempted murder charge, and a gun charge, and he got 50 years. And so these wrongful conviction, type organizations got him out. He went on Joe Rogan, all about how he changed. He was introduced on the Joe Rogan show as a miracle, an incredible person, had fully taken every class that you could take in prison to fully evolve and not ever reoffend. And he was working with, like
he was a Bloods guy. So he was a gang reform guy, right? Wasn't that his thing? Is like
he's working in like, what do you call it? It's like youth, right? That too, but I thought he was also working in the, like, if you don't, the local defender's office, like public defender type organization, not that defender, and they all came to his arraignment. But I'm spoiling the story. So after being on Joe Rogan and presented as a miracle of rehabilitation, in the Bronx, the neighbors hear gunshots break out. And before they hear the gunshots, they hear a guy going, I have kids, man, don't, and then gunshots ringing out. And then they see on the CTV footage a guy coming in with all these different disguises in and out in bags. And they found, so what happened was Sheldon Johnson killed his friend, and he kept some of the, and then he dismembered his body and kept some of the body in his apartment, and some of the body was found in his freezer, and some of the body was found in the victim's apartment. And we thought Joe Rogan would walk away
1
from
month
this
after being on Rogan.
Yeah. Right. We thought Joe Rogan might walk away, but then he's laughing. He's like, "Oh, we had kind of an unfortunate incident last time, Josh Dubin, you were on. An unfortunate instance." That's what he called a guy who murdered. Just unfortunate. And they just laughed about it like it was nothing, like a bunch of absolute callous, cruel people. It was really chilling.
Very strange. So Rogan he's a pro Innocence Project type. So he's had the Dubin on and some other character, I forgot his name, but he's had them on his show multiple times. So he believes that they're doing good work. So maybe that's why he's sympathetic to Knox or something. I don't know. It's so weird. I'm thinking when I see him with Knox, I'm thinking Eccles is going to show up on the Rogan show, and if he does, that'll destroy Rogan's reputation forever. It'll be a stain.
I don't think his reputation is. I mean, if a guy who comes on and murders after you've introduced him as a miracle doesn't destroy your reputation, I don't know what will. I think that he is in this position. I don't think he cares. And when he talks about Knox's crime, he says, "You were 20. You absolutely are a victim. You were 20." Not that. So the detail that comes to his mind about Knox being innocent is that her age at the time that she was involved in the murder of Meredith Kircher, not that she was innocent of it. That comes second. He goes, "Well, you were accused of a crime." They always say accused, not convicted. Accused of a crime you didn't commit. But you were 20 first. That comes first. So I don't think he cares. I don't think he cares that these people are guilty or innocent. It's a good story for his show.
Right.
America can't get enough of this innocent story, and the money is so good. So it's benefiting him. I mean, the money that these stories bring in, everyone wants to listen to a wrongfully convicted person talk, right? And their story
and bitch
of
about the legal system and how the woe was me and how the legal system did them wrong, right? Isn't that the similarity? Because she spent the full intro of this thing that happened last week just like, the system and I'm bad and blah, 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 law enforcement. Like she did that in the one 4 years ago, remember? She had like a planned canned statement. Blah, blah, blah. It was like the West Memphis 3 trope, I was convicted for a crime I didn't commit. They always say that all the time.
All the time, right. And I was accused, and now she calls it a murder orgy, something I had nothing to do with. People going into their echo chambers and fighting online. That's what she's saying about her case, that people were going into echo chambers and that they couldn't get to the... Meanwhile, her father had got in a PR team before he ever hired a lawyer, $1 million put into...
Right.
propagandizing the American public. And now she's going to say that her case was famous not because her father hired a PR agency, but because people went into their echo chambers and fought online, and it was a case for whatever reason pinged all the right buttons in all the right places.
Right. And that she was like the beautiful, victim or whatever. And there might be it seemed to be like a subtext of they're jealous of her. And so therefore she was, she made a good story and things like that. So she had the whole, the victim thing.
Never mind, she goes, this case is very simple. And that's the advantage of these. That's what I thought. That, this is the advantage of these innocence narratives is they make complicated cases very simple. Like I did nothing, and they just pulled me in and got me to falsely confess, and because they were so mean to me.
Right.
Meanwhile, she was given, offered chamomile tea, and offered to go down to the before interrogation to get snacks out of the vending machine, before her horrible, before they started to torture her, according to her.
Right. It's the same as Miss Kelly, right? These overlapping things. Miss Kelly was kept for 12 hours and tortured and whatever, and they confessed. It's the same baloney, same media baloney.
Absolutely. I mean, they have sold this idea of false confessions like it's something that happens that, I mean, it can happen where 5, 6 people, 7, 8, 9, you're talking about the Central Park 5, all falsely confess, in very consistent ways, in detailed, consistent ways. I mean, they've sold
in front of their parents. Yeah.
Right. In front of their parents.
Filmed.
None of the risk factors for false confessions are very few, low IQ, being deprived food and water, having very little of those risk factors, we're going to have these false confessions now. So they've really sold us kind of these rare things. Like, I mean, I believe that, wrongful convictions are very rare. They've sold them as just every day of our justice system is just doling out tons of them because they don't care, because these prosecutors don't care. They just want to win. That's another trope that they pulled out. And he says, but he had DNA evidence. And never mind that Amanda Knox's DNA was found on the handle of the knife and Meredith Kircher's DNA was found on the blade. Just
that was in Solicito's house, right? It wasn't even on site.
Right.
Right, yeah.
So that they've Rudy Goudet, no court that has ever looked at this case has thought that one guy did it alone. So you would have to say for Amanda Knox to be innocent, you would have to say that all the DNA evidence that convicted Rudy Goudet is right, but all the DNA evidence that convicted Knox and Solicito was wrong and corrupted. I mean, it's the same investigators and, same lab. Doesn't make any sense.
Right. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of evidence. Even outside of the DNA, just like Goudet's statements and things like that. I mean, what they got convicted of a lot. And my understanding is that the final decision in 2015, it was that the DNA wasn't kept properly, so they couldn't properly convict. Right? Wasn't that really the problem? Is that the storage of the evidence was at fault? Therefore, so it wasn't like there wasn't enough evidence. It's just that the evidence had decomposed, right? Isn't it something like that?
They said it wasn't. It was basically a political decision to. Hillary Clinton was threatening to go over there and free Knox. I mean, they had whipped up through PR the American public into a frenzy, and the politicians, including Donald Trump, not mentioned in this interview.
Interesting.
Who gave Amanda Knox money. And she never thanked him, and
surprise,
and advocated for her, and so, that's never mentioned. So yeah, it was kind of a political decision in a court that really didn't have the jurisdiction to throw out the evidence. Is my understanding that final court of cassation is just to evaluate all the undercourts to see if everything was done by the letter, not to reevaluate the evidence. But they did. The only way that they could let Amanda Knox go with a very damning decision that she was there at the scene of the crime, that she washed Meredith Kircher's blood off her hands, and that this was a crime of, multiple attackers, all very damning decision when the decision that let her go. The only way they could get to that decision was by throwing out all the DNA evidence. I mean, have you ever heard our favorite, not that we, Alan Dershowitz talk about Amanda Knox?
No, I'm afraid though. What did he say?
You want to hear him? Oh, hold on.
I do.
Joining us now to talk about what's next in the case is Alan Dershowitz. He's a professor at the Harvard University Law School, author of Taking the Stand. So much confusion here about what this case would mean if it was in America, for example. Let's first of all clarify this issue about double jeopardy. She can't be extradited because under US law, double jeopardy doesn't exist.
Well, there would be no double jeopardy under American law if an intermediate court of appeals reversed the conviction, because that's not a final judgment. That reversal was then reversed by a higher court. So there wouldn't be double jeopardy under American law. There is no double jeopardy under Italian law. There are thousands of American people in jail today on the basis of far less evidence than was presented against Amanda Knox. The evidence against her is very, very considerable. You wouldn't know that by listening to the American media that has been saying repeatedly that there's no evidence against against her. She falsely accused somebody of committing the crime. She created a false alibi. She first admitted she was at the scene of the crime. They found forensically that multiple people had to commit the murder. The person who was convicted of the murder said she did it. The evidence is very, very considerable. Now, that may not be enough to persuade everybody or even to go beyond a reasonable doubt. But for people who say there's no evidence, they're just not telling the truth. There's considerable evidence, and she would probably be extradited under the law if she were if the conviction were affirmed. Now, this has become a very political case in the United States. Politicians and the media are all saying that she was innocent and that she's been railroaded by a court system that sounds like an Iranian court system. But that's just not true. And so if the case is decided under the law, she will be extradited. If it's decided by politics, perhaps not.
And a lot of people in Italy do feel as if their legal system is being questioned unfairly as a result of all of this, because, as you say, it's emotional, it's political, and there are other high-profile cases for extradition in the US to get people on.
So there we go. There we go. I mean, we're not a huge fan of Alan Dershowitz, but as you know, I've been very critical of him on this channel for his involvement with Jeffrey Epstein and other cases. But on this case, he happens to be right.
Yeah, rest in peace, Virginia Giuffre. So sad. He
Sad,
said she
sad.
had sex with him 6 times. So, and the court case.
He had to, and then she had to publicly apologize to him.
Well, they I don't know if that court case got settled, but they took him all the way to the deposition. Right before the deposition, that case dropped, that civil case. So they either did a clever thing, which is settle amongst themselves outside of the court's involvement, which is what I really think happened.
I think they both apologized to each other and settled.
Yeah, I think that's what happened.
And I wondered how much, how much of, of that, just talking about that briefly, of how much of that was healthy to do is to take the money. She's to take the money with Prince Andrew and settle these cases.
Yeah.
So obviously it's appealing for a lawyer, but at how good it is for your soul, I don't know.
I don't know. I think it could cost her a lot. There's questions. Her dad said she was not suicidal. So, she was a fighter all the way till when she ended up passing away. So she was in Perth, and she was an enemy of the crown. There's no question about it. She took money from Prince Andrew.
Yeah.
And a lot of other people, a lot of powerful people. So anyway. There are pictures of her
I don't
as
know.
a 14, 15-year-old with Epstein in France, like literal at some party or something crazy.
Right. And had she not had that picture of herself with Prince Andrew, who would have believed her, That was the difference, was that picture was just so damning.
And Ghislaine, right? I think Atwood went to that flat and confirmed the staircase and the door and all the stuff that was pictured within that picture. So
yeah,
that's another story.
Andrew is such a dummy. Yeah. So back to Amanda Knox. What other things stood out to you in this interview?
She kept talking about her family, and it made me sick. Like it was almost like a gloating thing, like her kids and her vulnerability and stuff like that in her house. While Kircher ends up dead in Perugia in 2007 and doesn't get to live a full life. And her family and sisters are haunted and marred by this death that, to me, she's obviously involved with. And Solicito and Guadet. I think they all were involved. But there may be others unknown. I don't know. Those 3 definitely seem to be, for me, in my opinion, that are involved. So to hear her talk about her family and her kids and stuff like that and kind of humanize herself while somebody's ended up in the morgue is disturbing. It's disturbing as hell.
Very disturbing. And then she also says that she's a victim. She calls it a murder orgy, and she says, I'm a crime a man committed. So she knows that men statistically, as far as sexually motivated crimes, are in the 90s, and women commit very little of them. But what she leaves out is that there was a size 37 woman's shoe print in Meredith's blood found in the room of the murder. Also, there were women's size fingerprints on Meredith Kircher's body. The crime would have had to be done just the way the knife wounds were on her neck had to be done by more than one person. Amanda Knox also had a scratch. You can call it a hickey if you want, but when you really look at the original picture, it looks very much like a scratch, unquestioned. Her story made no sense that she walked into her story changed all the time, and also made no sense that she walked into the house that she shared with Meredith, Philomena, and Laura, 3 other roommates, and that the door was wide open. She saw blood in the bathroom on the sink, and that it was dried, and that and a bloody footprint on the bath mat, and she just wanted to get vulnerable and naked and take a shower, and she didn't think anything of it, and didn't even look for Meredith. So, I mean, her story makes no sense, and what you have to understand is that as soon as Raffaele pulled her alibi, I mean, the original story that they were sticking to was that we were home all night and we didn't do any, we didn't go anywhere. We weren't
smoked
at
pot
the
and
villa.
watched the movie, right? Yeah.
Amelie too. It's very much like the Michael Peterson, American Sweethearts. We were watching an innocent kind of, right, about a free-spirited woman like Amanda Knox. That's also another trope that she brings in this interview, that she was free-spirited, and Meredith Kircher was the uptight English woman. But and once Raph pulled his alibi, that's when she falsely accused her boss. So, she actually really solidified why her slander conviction is so important. And I hadn't even thought of this, was that for her to falsely accuse someone else, right, and knowingly falsely accuse someone else and be convicted of it, she had to know who did the crime. And she's like, and because of this court of castation, meaning the Supreme Court's decision that decided that I was there at the scene of the crime and washed Meredith Kircher's blood off my hands, and that this was a crime done of multiple attackers. Strangely, Amanda Knox has never looked for the other attackers. Only, she
Only
strangely disagrees with, right, only Rudy Gude. Right, only Rudy Gude. I just lost my train of thought.
Another similarity to the West Memphis Three,
right,
by the way, finding the other people who did it. Right,
she's
where's
not looking for the other two.
Yeah.
She's disagreeing with every court that's ever looked at this case, that that one person did it alone. And boy, is Joe Rogan just hammering it home, like, you're a victim. She's like, I want to tell you a story. I was in Los Angeles, and basically what happened, she says, and she's such an unreliable narrator, who knows, someone broke into her home, and her husband, she had to protect her 2 young children, and her husband was there, and she thought, how can I jump out of the window with 2 kids, and can I barricade myself in this room? So she's worried about being murdered again. And this is a theme with her. I could have been murdered too had I been there. I would have been the victim, not that.
Right. And it just kind of, there's a theme of female vulnerability in this.
Right.
Where they're talking about fighting and self-defense, and she invites him to work out with her. Wow, that you better be careful. But like these things of like she's propagating this view of her as this, oh, woe is me, and I'm not capable of doing anything violent, physically violent or anything. And there's an interesting exchange where he says, oh, well, that's just like any upstanding Christian would want to be. And she goes, I'm not a Christian. And then I was reading through her book, like My Search for Meaning Free. I got the free pages. And literally on page 39, it starts with, there is no God. Deep down, I knew this the day Mom's boyfriend, a devout Catholic, chased me through the house, fury in his eyes. So she knew there was no God from a very early age, which for me is like, okay, your worldview is much more flexible than somebody who rigidly follows the Old Testament or New Testament or something like that. And that's actually, and also this kind of duality, she's comparing her. She's still obsessed with Kircher in this new book. Like, she's talking about Meredith a lot and making her look bad. So she's not like, Meredith is not some great person she knew. She's telling about her casually hooking up with Italian boys and asking for condoms and all this other stuff like that. And I think that it's a bit of a snipe for me for her. So, and that's a theme that goes all the way back to 2007, is that they did not like each other, right? That they were different, oil and water, right?
Right. So Amanda Knox didn't clean. She played the same guitar note over and over again, driving everyone crazy. They had a chore schedule. Amanda Knox didn't respect it. She didn't flush the toilet, which is an interesting parallel because Rudy Goudet gets an upset stomach in this and takes a dump in the toilet, and Amanda Knox saves it. All she wants to show the investigators is his prize poop. She doesn't flush it, right? So she can, they cleaned up the scene. The scene of the crime was cleaned, I believe, very much by Raph and Amanda, and they left what they thought was, Rudy Goudet's, traces of Rudy excrement, and what they thought was the things that he touched, and sometimes they were right. But they
in that interview,
right?
the interview that Goudet did in 2016 with Italian journalists, you can watch it on YouTube. He says, like, why is there so much evidence of yours and not theirs? He said they washed everything up, they cleaned everything up, and
that's right.
So
and
staged the fake intro on the second floor, broken window that had glass on top of things when it should have been under the rock and all this stuff. It's obviously staged.
Right. And I mean, you can say that, they put bars on the top windows that can help you climb it, but they had to get a professional climber to climb the windows to show how easy it would be to break in. But if you're not a professional climber and you don't have those extra bars that were added later to on the second windows to pull you up, it would be very hard to scale that wall. And there was no signs of scaling of the wall being scaled, or, that's another thing. And also no DNA of Rudy Goudet. The only DNA found in the room of the stage break-in was the mixed blood of Meredith and Amanda. So why were Meredith and Amanda bleeding at the same time? It's a really important fact that just gets kind of overlooked. But what's stranger is the thing that Amanda has come to Joe Rogan with this now. She's Saint Amanda because she has reached out and started a relationship with her prosecutor, and she has to humanize him and see, like, that she admits she has extreme anger, right?
Manini, right? Isn't his name Manini?
Right, towards Manini. But she says you can have extreme anger towards a person and at the same time hold them in your hand as the tender, fallible creature that is capable of violence against you. So here's a woman who's been convicted of violence talking about the prosecutor as the real perpetrator of violence. And this is this kind of Darvo thing that this movement does, which is deny, attack, reverse, victim, offender. So that now the perpetrators are now the real victims, and the victims are forgotten altogether. And this is a pattern in almost every single one of these innocence fraud cases that I talk about on this channel.
Yeah, it's incredible. And the violence, the terms are way out of context. Like, give me a break. This guy's like a retired, but a noted, legal professional, but also who still believes Knox is present at the crime scene to this day. He hasn't changed his view. But I think she probably went to see him because they needed something for a new book. I wouldn't be surprised if the real aim was a commercial reason to create a new theme for her next moneymaker, right? Because her last one, I think these books are selling. I don't think people are interested.
She's got a smaller publisher, certainly. She's gone down to a much smaller publisher than her first book, and she's still making money off this crime and not doing anything else. And she's befriended. So she also, I think it's a real obsession with her is she couldn't really vindicate herself fully. Anybody who really knows anything about the case knows that this is not a great exoneration. Right. This was a political decision that could let her go, throw out all the DNA evidence, say that she was there at the scene of the crime, that this was a crime of multiple attackers, and that she washed Meredith Kircher's blood off her hands. Not a great exoneration. But so there's one part in this interview where she says, well, if I don't know if she said she already exonerated herself, but if I can't exonerate, can I exonerate myself in the court of public opinion? And I think that she looks for people. I think she's given up on me. Did I tell you she mentioned me?
No, but I'm not surprised.
I'm like one of the last people out here who's still hammering home her guilt. Everyone else is like long abandoned it, and I think that's also to her advantage, is that, I'm one of the last holdouts that still will talk about Amanda Knox's guilt,
Right.
And so
she's
she
still
had
in a
on
public
a
space.
guest, right.
She has a
She had
podcast
on
too,
a
right? Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, she had on a guest on her podcast that I had on, and she's like, "What do you think of this innocence fraud movement?" I'm like, "What movement? What? I
Right.
wish it were a movement. It's like just me and a couple other people that are talking about it. I wish it were a movement, Amanda." And he's like, "Yeah, no, I don't believe that." He's like, "There are really wrongfully accused people," and then he mentions Jerry Sandusky as wrongfully convicted or accused, as they say. They never really say wrongfully convicted. And a couple of other, people, this lawyer that I had on who talked about Adnan Syed. So, I mean, I think that, she's always looking to convince the people, I think, because that's where it's most convincing to the public. If the prosecutor now thinks she's innocent, if she could actually bamboozle it, would give her a great feeling of power, as a psychopath, to fool even the prosecutor and get him to come to her side. Didn't work, but okay. But it's also very convincing to the people, to the public, that the prosecutor wouldn't think she's a bad enough person to talk to her. Get it? You get it? That's key for her, what people think of her. Yeah. It's always really important that people think she's a good person. Now she's like a saint because she's forgiven the prosecutor.
Yeah, she's been so big for doing that. But like their book is really something else. Page 41. There was a large crucifix on the wall, the limp body of Christ looking over the judge's shoulder. As my trial started, I began to understand how much that Catholic worldview would determine my fate. And then it goes on. These are two most prominent female roles in the Bible. The two Marys, the Madonna and the whore, the virgin and the prostitute. Those archetypes had traction with the jury, the judge, and the world. They were roles in a fantasy about good and evil. It was a lot easier to paint me as pure evil, the ultimate sinner, by painting Meredith as pure good, the ultimate saint. And it was a disservice to both of us. I don't believe that narrative really was that. I think that they called her Foxy Noxy or something like that. But she goes on, watching this unfold, some members of my family recommended that I started wearing a cross to court. They were realizing, just as I was, that appearances seemed to matter more than the truth, and that my fate might depend on something as simple as whether or not I fit the image of a good Catholic girl. There's the image again. But I refused to lie. I didn't believe in God, and I wouldn't misrepresent that I did. She doesn't believe in God.
It's so crazy.
Yeah. But this whole thing about her image and her perceptions is really something else. Yeah, she's very much obsessed with that.
Because it's all about her, always all about her. Meredith's name never gets brought up in this 3-hour, 20-minute Joe Rogan interview. It never gets spoken. I mean, actually, no, it does get spoken once. She says it's incomplete though. It's Meredith's family and friends, but otherwise it's referred to as her friend. That she, it's another way to try to con the public to say we were friends. They weren't friends. They didn't get along. They started out trying to be friends, and quickly that fell apart. Also, Meredith started dating one of the men downstairs who lived downstairs named Giacomo, and Amanda had designs on him. And Meredith wasn't too thrilled about that Amanda Knox was trying to seduce him and had real designs on him. And Giacomo was one of the first people to think that Amanda Knox could have been involved in this crime. So, there's a lot of backstory, and it's a great, does a great disservice to the actual victim of the crime to make, Amanda Knox the victim. She says, I was a victim of a crime before I became a victim of the criminal justice system. So she literally calls herself a victim over and over again in this. And what's interesting about the passage you just read is that when she was in prison, the one person that she would talk to was the priest. That was her great friend.
Interesting. As somebody who doesn't believe in God, how strange is that? I think she says she's a what
Buddhist.
Buddhist, yeah.
Kind of like someone else we know said he was, right?
Yeah.
Didn't Eccles say he was a
Very good.
Buddhist?
Yeah. I have to find that picture of Knox, Eccles, and Berlinger together, because it's just something else. They're friends. Like, that's even crazier. But one of the things, this whole victim, the person as the victim, is a common theme in all of the innocence fraud stuff that you've covered on my show. So that's Syed, West Memphis 3, Stephen Avery, and Knox. Like, they're all victims, and the court cases say something else.
Oh yeah. I mean, and then she's saying, I don't think crime victims are treated very well. And Joe Rogan's like, well, sometimes the state gives them money. I'm like when? Like, when is that? How many cases does that happen with? Very few that I know of, at least. And we got to treat the actual crime victims. We had, there has to be some kind of, she's like, reconciling between this idea that she calls it the one victim fallacy. So the idea that, so she thinks that there can be the murdered person and the person she says, quote unquote, falsely accused, LOL, the perpetrator, are both victims. They should be allowed to be both victims.
Right. Yeah. Her podcast is called Labyrinths, which is probably aptly named, I believe, because it's like a labyrinth of distortions on her public statements about her past. But man, she's cashed in. She really has.
Oh, it is definitely. And the other, she's advocating with this Innocence Network.
It's Innocence Center, I think, is what it is.
Center. Thank you. Innocence Center. Thank you. I haven't even in my notes, Innocence Center, that they lost funding. When I was like, oh, that's something good that happened recently. They lost their funding. And he's like, why? He's like, and she's like, well, I think there are certain buzzwords we used. Who would lose their funding over using buzzwords? Probably.
Right. What did she say? Like, free was the buzz. What was the buzzword? It was like free or something like that, or it was like a lame term.
Right. And innocence and justice should be bipartisan issues. And too often, both sides of the aisle are pushing for this innocence fraud. And, because the American public loves it. They just love this story. And it doesn't really matter if it's true or not. They just want to hear it over and over again about how these prosecutors, another theme of this is these prosecutors can't admit that they're wrong, don't care about the truth. Right. I mean, it's just not anything close to reality.
Yeah, don't follow the evidence. I think she said that back in 2021. It's who buys this? Come on, man. Come on, Joe. Joe should know better.
I'm still in a conversation with that crazy story that was written about me, and the fact that my entire identity is now wrapped up in the death of my friend that I had nothing to do with, and I'll forever be defined by. Because it's such a she has a weird psycho stutter. It's such a captivating story. And Joe Rogan chimes in, because the prosecutor was dead set on winning and wasn't necessarily interested in the truth.
Right.
I mean, this is like the way, this is like, this is like a real script.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Terrible. At a certain point, somebody with some critical and analytical skills has just got to go, this doesn't make any sense. Come on. It's just like the West Memphis 3 or something. There's so many court cases and so much information that contradicts what she says. It's really something else.
Oh, here you go. You sent me the Innocence Center. Thank you.
Yeah, that's it. Right. She's on there smiling. I mean, it's kind of creepy. Like when you see her with this group of people and she on the board, she's got that creepy smile. Oh man.
Yeah, let me just share it. Let me share my screen so I can show what I'm looking at here. I mean, it's probably, just so much money is these organizations pull in, donate, launched in 2023, have decades of innocence work under their belt, all worked at the California Innocence Project as faculty or staff or faculty member. I would love to know what happened to that California Innocence Project. Collectively, the group has freed more than 40 people who served 560 plus years in prison for crimes. Oh, here it is. Crimes they did not
There
commit.
you go. Yep.
Right? Otherwise, you might think, why were they convicted in the first place? The team has been responsible for getting a dozen laws changed to prevent future injustices and make it easier to free the innocent. Yeah, there's a little truth right there. Getting it to free the guilty, more like making much more pro-criminal laws. Yeah.
She was a 2024 Innocence Network Impact Award winner too, so she's got an award. These are just, and I think Jason Baldwin is on some Innocence Project thing in Texas as well. So,
and here's the T-shirt Exonerate, which is Marty Tankleff, another guilty person. That took me years to make that episode. It's called "Did Keith Raniere?" Who's Keith Raniere, the NXIVM guru's lawyer. So he killed both his parents, his adoptive parents, Arlene and Seymour Tankleff, and then he got a license plate, very much like Amanda Knox, with Exonerate on. So you see that T-shirt? Exonerate on the left. Wow. You gotta, so it's like very important, like this, that they take on this public innocence. It's because it's built on sand. It's built on lies, more like. So they just keep propagandizing for themselves. They never stop, and nor does Amanda Knox. And now Joe Rogan is fully on board. On board.
It's part of the phenomenon. Part of their platform is this media approach, just to get out in the media and do it. It's really something else, wherever they can.
What else did we not talk about in this interview?
I don't know. I mean, just kind of the weird way they kind of get in, and the way she's presenting herself as this kind of thoughtful person who endured an injustice and how to cope in the context of that. Like, I think that was a significant amount of that 3 hours is like, well, then you can do this, and then you work out, and then you go and take your rage out, and what's your mentality and meditation, and all this like burdens and stuff. So it's almost like a weird kind of self-help book, but the core of it is a lie.
Right. Really, and if you look at the comments, I was shocked by the amount of comments saying, I didn't think Amanda Knox was guilty until I heard this interview. She's befriending the prosecutor, get the F out, type stuff. And she says, I don't wish jail upon her prosecutor. Why not? Why doesn't she wish jail? Wouldn't you be furious? And that's the thing that you see with these quote unquote wrongfully convicted people that really aren't these innocence fraudsters, is that they're never angry at the people that falsely convicted them. And they're very uncurious about who did it. Like, right. If Amanda Knox really, knows the evidence, she would know that every court that looked at this said that this is multiple attackers and one woman's involved too. She's not curious as to,
right. That would be the solution, involved. Right, Roberta? It would be over. Because once she found the actual killer, it would just be like, I am totally exonerated in court of law and in the public, right?
Right. She's not interested in finding. She just is interested in twisting and saying every court that looked at this is wrong. It was just Rudy Goudet alone who did it alone. Strangely let in somehow, I guess they'll say, very uncharacteristically, that Meredith Kercher let him in. I don't think so. And strangely, they started fighting about 300 euros that were on Meredith Kercher's bedside that were missing. Amanda and Meredith, that started this whole thing. So, she really plays up this idea that she was raped and a woman couldn't be involved in that, or it couldn't have happened, afterwards, like she couldn't have been involved in one element, and it couldn't have happened with her there or with her knowledge.
Right. So I think that's part of the
that's
thing.
Really
like,
played up.
Well, I'm a woman. Women are vulnerable, and there was a rape, and I'm a woman, and women don't rape, and they don't kill. So therefore, I'm not associated with it. But I mean, Solicito, they only knew each other for a week, and Solicito was into really dark stuff. He was into like murder videos, and there's pictures of him as like a butcher with blood all over the place, and I think they were kind of like a short term kind of fed off each other. Her strange personality defects and him, and a lot of weed,
Right.
right? Didn't he say like I'm never
Yeah.
smoking weed again? When he went to the police or something like
Right.
that, if I remember.
Yeah. But also, I think there was also probably some kind of stimulant drugs involved because she was going through tons of money. She was going through thousands of dollars, in her time there. And
So she's
her
doing
supporters
blow or
will say she was buying truffles and chocolates and stuff, but not likely. She doesn't seem to be sleeping a lot, so I think there was, and she also says that how dare this prosecutor falsely accuse her of doing this when she had no criminal record, but she did. And so did the only one who didn't was Rudy Gude at the time. So she did, and Raph did. She had held a party where people were throwing rocks, and you can say it's small, but this idea that people have, your life in crime has to start somewhere. At 20, was she supposed to have an extensive life in crime? Growing up in the suburbs, I don't know.
Right. What was Solicito's crime? What was he convicted of? I don't.
He
remember.
was convicted of possession of hash.
Okay.
So. Yeah. So they've sort of hinted at him being involved in maybe harder drugs, and his father kind of keeping an eye on him was part of that. He was trying to keep an eye on whether he was keeping sober, which obviously he wasn't. These crimes between psychopaths are on very, the relationships are on very quickly. If you look at the way Carla Homolka and Paul Bernardo, got together, very much similar to Raph and Amanda. It's like they meet someone like them, and it ignites very quickly. But she says, I'm mothering my prosecutor through his psychological tantrums. She's the great mother, the great sort of, it's like Amanda as the great saint of this.
Right.
The great saint comes back to share her wisdom with the masses.
Wow, it's
not share.
Incredible.
She's to sell her great wisdom to the masses, I would say, not share.
Right,
and can we talk about her relationship with Monica Lewinsky?
Yes, please do. That is
Monica
crazy.
Lewinsky's producing some kind of documentary. I'd heard they were friends, and this is something Amanda does, she latches on to more sympathetic people who didn't kill people, but and sort of marries her story of getting away with murder with their story of being social, her being a social pariah for committing a murder, with them being a social pariah for doing something much lesser, like having a relationship with the married president of the United States. What do you think of the whole? I mean, I think
the strangeness is never ending. I think we could probably our careers can be based on these innocence fraudsters going on media shows, because it just doesn't seem to stop, and it like metastasizes and there's new connections. I mean, I just was so shocked that she showed back up on Rogan. I was like, what? I thought it was an old clip when it popped up. I was like, no, he didn't do this. And sure enough,
he'll never stop. He'll never stop. He'll be just propagating these like innocence fraud, innocence fraudsters, and pushing this wrongful conviction movement to the hilt, no matter how much it, continues to backfire. I didn't think it could get much worse than someone committing a murder,
like cutting up a body a month after being on your show. Yeah.
But they just laughed about it and called it an unfortunate incident. And then they did what now the wrongful conviction movement is doing now. So if they get out someone, so instead of thinking, the logical thing to think, if someone gets out and reoffends, is maybe who's been, quote unquote, their conviction has been overturned, they would call it exonerated. Anybody who gets out for any reason is exonerated, right. Whether it's on a technicality or not, or whatever,
right.
Or by bamboozling the legal system, it's all an exoneration. The logical thing to think of was that person reoffends is they probably did the first crime. But the way that this wrongful conviction movement is heading this off is that they didn't do the first crime, that they were traumatized in prison, and that's why they got violent, is from the trauma of being wrongfully in prison. And we saw a man who tried to kill a police officer. It's on my channel, I covered it, and he, tried to throw him out on just a routine traffic stop. He was like the, poster child for wrongful convictions, and the police officer had to use his gun and kill him because he, to save his own life. And they said that, it was probably because he was, again, it was somehow
the system's fault.
The system's fault that he was traumatized from being in prison so long for being wrongfully convicted. LOL.
Right. No, I posted something on social media that Rogan was out to dinner with a bunch of like Innocence Project people. Like he was promoting this as a good thing. Like, here I am out with all the Innocence Project guys. And I reposted and said, here's Joe with a bunch of con men. I thought it was Dubin and all these other people. Like he cannot, I just can't believe he can't see through this already. Like, come on, dude. You literally had somebody die, kill somebody. You got out, helped get out of jail or help rehabilitate in the public eye. And I mean, there's a reason we have jails, and all societies have jails. There are people who break the law and don't mind breaking it over and over. So it's just like, wow, this is, I mean, how much is I'll ask you a question. How much is Joe Rogan culpable or blameworthy on promoting all this on the #1 podcast in the world?
I think he's very culpable, but as many times as these people reoffend, it's also our media, which is interesting that it's brought up by Amanda Knox and Joe Rogan that are, of course, Amanda Knox brings it up to say, well, those rare people in America that wrote about her guilt just were going with the best story. That's obviously not the best story. The best story is the most unusual story, right? Which is someone who's a girl who's, a young woman who's wrongfully accused of a crime of killing her roommate in Italy. That's the best story. No, isn't that the best story? Not that she did it, but she's going to say it's that she did it, and that those journalists that wrote that were just saying that they are taught by their profession to go with the best story that's going to bring in the most money, which is, again, a kind of Darvo technique. She's taking the narrative of innocence fraud, which is these journalists join in because they're fraudsters themselves. They're ideologically aligned and they want to cash in. The money is on the other side of the movement. There's so much money. It is a multi-billion-dollar movement, this wrongful conviction movement. And it's, I will probably, go, on this, I'll probably go to my dying, my last breath fighting it. But it's like this thing, anytime anything's kind of like, and it seems to get bigger every year. It's like this snowball. It's making people more and more money. And anytime, I mean, look at Scientology. That has been, it's not like the wrongful conviction movement. That has been exposed 17 different ways, Scientology, and it still goes on because it's still making people money. It's very hard to stop something that's making people money, and that it's also very hard to correct because these cases are complicated. The truth is in the minutia of these cases. I mean, we can, I try to present them as simply as I can, but I don't have time to go through all the changes in Amanda Knox's stories. And there are many changes in her story from, when she got, from when, and she also said she called the police. She never called the police. She said, last time I called 911, the police punished me for it. And, or somehow she uses a different word. I was betrayed by the police. She never called the police. First, okay, so what they did with Meredith's phones is they threw them in someone's garden.
That's right.
So she couldn't call for help, which is the real cruelty of the crime. And secondly, they have these kind of like the postal police come, which are someone had found the cell phones and they tracked them down to Meredith's home, right? Because they belong to Meredith. That's when Raph called the police. Not Amanda, called the police, and they said that nothing was taken. Somehow he knew that there was a break-in and nothing was taken.
Right.
And not that someone was murdered, or they were just reporting a break-in. And that when it came to, I think you mentioned this earlier, but we didn't really get to explain it. There was Meredith was behind a locked door. And when the police asked if it was normal, if she locked her door, Amanda said, oh, yeah, she always locks her door, even to take a shower. And the roommate was like, no. Roommates were like, no, she never locks her door. So she was trying to delay the finding of Meredith's body somehow. And she knew things about her intimate details of the crime that no one knew. She said that she overheard the police talk about it, but they weren't talking about it. So, there's no way for her to know those details.
Yeah, and she, like, both Goudet, he said he heard a horrible scream, and then there was something that she triggered Knox. Like, they said something about the scream, and she put her hands over her ears, like she had heard it or something like that. Do you remember that part of the story?
Yes. Yeah. So they took her. Okay, this is an odd thing. They took her when it got to the knife drawer, showing her the knife drawer. She put her hands over her ears and started banging her head. That's one thing. Yeah. And then she said when she confessed to being there, she said that it was Patrick Lumumba, her boss, and that she heard a loud scream, strangely the same kind of curdling scream the neighbors heard that night, or at least one neighbor heard. And then they heard people running different directions. So,
so she validated this scream that all these other people heard. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So and she put her hands over her ears. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any questions? I don't know.
I can't believe she's on that show. Rogan. Come on, dude. This is bad.
I don't think he cares that they're guilty. I just think he's totally out for himself. And he goes and he starts talking about people who are such losers, who care about things outside of their own control and who criticize other people. And I thought, what have you been doing? You've been criticizing the prosecutor, calling him, everything but a son of God through the, through the whole interview. So, I think that's really to discourage people from writing comments like about her guilt or criticizing Joe Rogan for taking this position. It's like he's going to get out ahead of it and say, you're a loser if you're writing me mean comments or you're talking about Amanda Knox's guilt. That's what I thought.
That's a total joke. The comments really are worthwhile on YouTube. People check them out. Like, a lot of people are in the know. They get it.
They get it because she's a very off tone. There's something about her demeanor that really, more than any other person that I talk about, that really, it scares people. Yeah. And she's odd.
Yeah, she's odd. She laughs at funny times, and the florid language is also kind of a giveaway. Like, murder orgy. He used violence against me. It's like, this is so off tone. Like, there's no violence in the law. It's supposed to be a logical, objective, cold, unrelenting pursuit of the truth. Get facts and put it through a court system and make sure the evidence is correct. So to say that's violence is telling. I mean, it's really absurd. But yeah.
Right. And I thought the more telling part was that she goes, there's some people who think that I'm not the victim, that there was only one victim, my friend, my roommate who was murdered. And they think that I should disappear. Now, I don't think she should disappear. I think she should reinvent herself and do something else that benefits the world, not this. Because I don't think innocence work. I think we have an innocence project. It's called our appeal system, right. And do something that benefits someone else. Do something else. Don't stay stuck in this. And she's tried and she's failed. And she quits everything she does. And she thinks that, she's like, there's some people who thinks that I shouldn't be profiting off of my murder of Meredith Kercher, basically, essentially. And Joe Rogan's there to go, no, absolutely. You were 20 and you were a victim and you were wrongfully accused and you were in prison for years. Right. 4 years.
I think 3 years. Yeah. 3 years.
3 years, 4 years. What was it exactly? Yeah,
I think
something like
was
that.
3.
Yeah.
Wow.
3 or 4. Yeah. Something like that.
And still in the court, still in the court system after all these years, almost 20 years, still lit, going through the process of determining her calumnia conviction, which has been validated twice. So, kind of like the West Memphis 3, 2 convictions. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I got to wrap it up.
Yeah.
I got to wrap it up.
Oh, okay. Sorry. No,
it's okay.
Sorry.
Thanks for having me.
Let me just deal with these super chats. Yeah. Hold on 1 second. Let me just deal with these 1 second. Thank you, Momager 81 for becoming a member. Tammy, Roberta, highlight. You love books. So do you buy books from people like her? No, I don't want to be lied to. I mean, I'll read it if I have to. If you demand that I read it, I'll read it. If you demand an episode on it, I'll read it. But what's the point of reading her book and being lied to? You know, a better book is Liz Huell's book, the manipulative memoir of Amanda Knox. I did read some of Waiting to Be Heard, and it's just a lie-a-thon, page after page. Thank you, William Ramsey, for doing this. It was so nice
Thank
to
you.
talk to you.
It's
again.
great to be with you again. It's been too long.
Appreciate
Let's
it.
do another one soon. People, check out all of Roberta and
All right.
I's stories. I'm about to repost your Larry Ray investigation too, so people can check out that at William Ramsey Investigates.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks for doing
Bye,
it.
Roberta.
All
Take
right.
care. Yeah, all the best.
Bye. Bye.
I'm gonna want you to forget. She comes at night until Meredith's neck. The double DNA knife we won't forget. Spun cartwheels and then splits at the police station. Couldn't hide your relation. Daddy got you a PR team before he hired a lawyer. When your alibi fell apart, you didn't ignore employer. Let him rot in jail until he got out with an alibi. Ruined his life with your big fat lie. Murder made her rich. She's a psycho, a slut and a selfish bitch. She stole Meredith's life with the plunge of a blade. Never stops profiting off her crime. Murder pays and pays and pays. The city of Perugia will chase you out of town with pitchforks and torches. Like the monster you are. Get out crosses and garlic and watch how your skin scorches. We will never forget how you staged a burglary. Covered your ears to block out Meredith's screams. Mixed blood of you and Meredith all over the crime scene. Keep saying Rudy did it alone, but we are wise to your scheme. Amanda Knox is a convicted liar. You can't produce your own Hulu flick. Innocence Farm documentary. Remember Roll's oldest trick. The Court of Cassation said you were there at the scene of the crime. Wash Meredith blood off your hands and Daddy got you a PR team before he hired a lawyer. When your alibi fell apart, you blamed your employer. Let him rot in jail until he got out with an alibi. Murder made her rich. She's a psycho, a flawed and a selfish bitch. She stole Meredith's life with the plunge of a blade. Never stops profiting off her crime. Murder pays and pays and pays. And pays. The city of Perugia will chase you out of town with pitchforks and torches. Like the monster you are, get out crosses and garlic and watch how your skin scorches. We will never forget how you staged a burglary. Covered your ears to block out Meredith's screams. Mixed blood of you and Meredith all over the crime scene. Keep saying Rudy did it alone, but we are wise to your scheme. Amanda Knox is a convicted liar. You can't produce your own Hulu flick. Innocence Farm documentary. Remember Roll's oldest trick. The Court of Cassation said you were there at the scene of the crime. Wash Meredith's blood off your hands and Daddy got you a PR team before he hired a lawyer. When your alibi fell apart, you blamed your employer. Let him rot in jail until he got out with an alibi. Murder made her rich. She's a psycho, a slut and a selfish bitch. She stole Meredith's life with the plunge of a blade. Never stops profiting off her crime. Murder pays and pays and pays. And pays and pays and pays. And pays and pays. And pays and pays and pays. And pays and pays. And pays and pays and pays.